Hello everyone, this is Cain from Cain Motorsports. I wanted to go ahead and make a couple of little videos here to help people out with their bandoleros and things like that when they're getting started, just so they have some of the most important information and things moving forward. And the first most important one that I wanted to talk about was how to square the rear end of your bandolero. So, I mean, that is one of the things that is incredibly critical to the handling of the car. The rear end being out of square even a little bit is going to cause a handling issue that it's going to be very difficult, or if not impossible, to correct with any of the other adjustments on the car. So here is my method of doing so. If you guys have any questions or comments on this video or other ideas, please leave a comment below. Thanks.
All right, so what you're going to need to accomplish this goal is a couple of very, very simple tools. This is a very easy thing to do, but it's one of those things that people dread doing because they think it's a giant pain. Okay, what you need is you're going to need 3 jack stands. Okay, 2 are going to be for the front and 1's going to be for the rear. And I'll explain why you're going to need 1 for the rear in a second. And then you obviously need your blocks for your rear suspension, because you want to keep this thing, when you raise it in the air, at the same ride height as you normally have it on the track. You also need a piece of cardboard, and this is the thing that people generally have, don't do. They usually put marks on the ground and things like that. This is the real key to this situation: is use a piece of cardboard rather than putting marks on the ground. And then finally, you're going to need a plumb bob to drop off of certain suspension components on the car. All right, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put your blocks in the rear. Make sure this thing stays at ride height. We use just regular chunks of wood. Place it just kind of snugly in there between the bird cage and the frame. And the same goes for the other side. Again, you don't want to like slam them in there. You just want to have them just touching in there so they maintain the correct ride height. Okay, now that the car is in the sky, the real difference on how my method on how to square the rear end is using a piece of cardboard. Okay, it's really difficult to measure your suspension points off the ground and be able to get any sort of, consistent measurement. So what I use is a piece of cardboard that has to be wide enough to fit between your axle and your frame to be able to drop your suspension points down. Now, you're like, well, wait a minute here, this can move around and that can screw up your reading, which is 100% true, which is why you use a jack stand to actually place on top of the cardboard and hold it in place. Okay, so to square the rear end, you need 4 specific points on the suspension that you're worried about to make sure that's in fact square. And when I say square, what I mean is this axle tube being exactly 100% perfect and parallel to the bar on the frame that's in front of it here, okay? So the points that we're concerned about is we're concerned about a spot where you drop a plumb bob off the right-hand side of the frame, where you drop a plumb bob, of course, off the left-hand side of the frame, and then there's actually 2 spots on the frame directly in front that we will hold the plumb bob, place it next to, and then drop it off there. Now, the good thing about the cardboard is that when the plumb bob comes down, you can actually go ahead and you can stick the plumb bob directly into the cardboard, and then you're going to know exactly where your mark is when we figure all that out. So let's do these individual points and we'll see what it looks like. So this is one of those things that you never want to rush. You got to take your time because these plumb bobs move around an awful lot. So make sure that it's on nothing specific and give it time to settle out. Okay, when it's perfect, you can push the plumb bob directly into the cardboard and it leaves your hole. I then usually highlight the hole by circling it here so I don't lose it. Okay, so here's the front bar here. This is the one that you're looking at. Okay, and this is the where you want the axle completely square to. This is basically, as far as I've heard, is the first bar they put in the car, and the most important when determining, you know, how everything lines up. So you do the same process here. You hold it 100% square here, or right onto the frame of the outside of that, and you can slowly let the plumb bob kind of like settle out. There you go. My second point. Okay. All right, 2 more points on the other side. Swing it over the axle. There it is. Ready? Perfect right there. All right, so we got our 4 points on our pieces of cardboard, and this is the real genius of this method, okay? The real genius of this method is that rather than now trying to find the actual point on the car itself and crawling underneath it and trying to measure, you get to pull the whole thing out and measure it, you know, where it's convenient and easy. It also then make sure that the car's in the exact same spot, provided you need to make any adjustments. I mean, if you would move it to a different area or roll the car out of the way and roll it back, so things can change, okay? Things can move. By having it up, you leave it in there. If you have to make an adjustment, you slide the cardboard back underneath it and you make your adjustment, and then you check it again, so you don't have to make any of those sort of changes. All right, now, we got our 4 points on our piece of cardboard, all laid out nice for us, just like that, okay? Now, to be able to determine if it's square now, we need a couple of little measuring tools. Just need a big, like, framing square that you can get really inexpensive, and then you just need an accurate at least 16th to the 16th, measuring stick that you can get at the local hardware store. Now, to first do this, you're going to be connecting the two. You're going to be connecting the dots, basically. You're not going to connect the dots front and back, but what you can do is you can connect the dots side to side. So we'll go ahead and do that now. All right, so again, you have to be super, super accurate. You're going to take your time doing this. You're not going to rush this. You're going to do this in a way where you have enough light, where you can see what you're doing, where then when you're measuring and you're striking these marks, you're striking these marks to the direct center of those little dots, okay? If you're off a little bit, your measurement will not work, and then you will have a false reading. So if you want to get this perfectly square, this is what you need to do. It takes a little time, a little effort, but in the end, you want it to be absolutely perfect. Directly to the center of each dot. And there we go. Now that we got that, we then have our framing square. Okay? Now for a framing square, again, what you want to do is you got to be able to strike 90-degree angles up and connect each other's dots that direction. So when I do this, I'm actually going to rotate this around to make this a little easier to see. There's more light going off the other direction. You want this to be, again, perfect. Connect the dots. Now, again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip the framing square this direction. This will account for any potential chance that the square is in fact out of square. Actually compensates for it. And draw your line. So now that we have our box drawn here, the easiest way then to, of course, determine if your rear end is completely square is by measuring the length of the two lines that you drew here, okay? If these two lines are 100% identical, you have a square rear end. It's not always the case, and I don't know how many people do this. It's very important. But if they're not 100% identical, you then need to, of course, adjust that on the trailing arms of the rear of the car, which we'll show you here in a second. It looks like we are 15 and 17, 30 seconds. 15, 17, 30 seconds. This is what we're looking to match, hopefully, on this side. We're 15 and an eighth. Okay. This side is about a 16th off. Okay, so here are your rear trailing arms, okay? Now the first thing to do before you make any sort of adjustments on these is you mark them. And you want to mark them because you want to know exactly how much you move them. So I'll just use a blue marker and put it on the side here because you want to make sure to be able to get back to the spot that you were at if some of your adjustments don't exactly work out. Now, these are really easy to adjust. You just need to, of course, break the nuts free that are holding them. All right, so once you have the 4 nuts basically cracked loose, then all you're doing is you're twisting up or down to increase or decrease the length of the rods. Okay, so in this case, what I found out is that one rotation on the actual rod itself is about 3/16 of an inch of change. So I'm looking at going a little bit more than 1/16 of an inch. I need to shorten this up by about 1/16 of an inch. So I'm only going to make a small adjustment. I'm going to go about 1/3 of the way around here. That's a quarter. I'm going to go a little bit more than a third, which should hopefully shorten it up just enough for what we're looking for. Okay, once I make those changes, you go ahead and you tighten up the tubes again. You tighten up the nuts. Okay, so now we made our adjustment. We go back and we place the cardboard back underneath, and as we place the cardboard back underneath, we re-drop the same points and we measure to see, in fact, if we're square. Once both of those lines are perfect, then your rear end is square, and then hopefully you don't bump anything, you don't touch anything. We bent an axle, so we place this new one in, and now we have to go back through the process to square the rear end. But that's the process that we use for squaring the rear end, and I hope it's of beneficial benefit to you. Thanks.